He laughed when I said I was done. Not a soft chuckle, not a nervous laugh. A full, teeth-showing, shoulders-shaking laugh, like I'd just told the funniest joke of the year. Then he went back to texting, smirking into his phone like I was invisible. No pause, no question, no why. That laugh was louder than any slap. My name is Lorraine. I'm 47 years old, and this is the story of how I learned that silence can be louder than revenge. We were sitting in the kitchen that night. That small, cold kitchen I'd cleaned more times than I could count. The same counter where I used to leave little lunch notes in his brown bag. The same room where we once slow danced barefoot after paying off our first business loan, lights dim, Marvin Gaye playing low from my old Bluetooth speaker. Now? He was eating leftovers from a paper plate, tapping his screen with greasy fingers, like I wasn't even worth the real dishes anymore. The hum of the refrigerator filled the silence. I could smell old barbecue sauce and motor oil on his jacket. That scent that used to mean he'd worked hard. Now it just smelled like distance. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't cry. I simply said, "I'm done, Darnell." He didn't even look up at first, and when he finally did, that's when he laughed. Like I was just mouthing words he didn't have to hear, like a man too confident in his comfort to imagine the floor shifting beneath him. That laugh stayed in my ears long after the lights were off. Even when I laid down that night staring at the ceiling fan, I could still hear it spinning in my head, circling the same question. When did he stop seeing me? We'd been married for 17 years. I'd helped him build his auto shop from nothing, from a leaky garage behind his cousin's house in Stone Mountain, Georgia. Those early years were rough. We couldn't even afford a decent air compressor, so he'd borrow tools and promise to make it right next Friday. Meanwhile, I worked double shifts at the hospital, sneaking naps in the break room just to float payroll and keep the lights on. He called me his ride or die, said he'd never met a woman who could be both loyal and useful. At the time, I took that as a compliment. I thought it meant partnership. Now I know that was a red flag wrapped in a bow. Useful. Like a tool. Like something that could be picked up and put down when needed. The real shift started last Thanksgiving. Our house smelled like cinnamon, turkey drippings, and that little burnt sugar smell from my pecan pie crust. We hosted dinner like always. Tablecloth ironed, candles lit, playlist ready. Family laughing in every corner. Even Darnell's mama showed up with her sour attitude and her watery mac and cheese, talking about, I didn't have time to thicken the sauce. I smiled anyway. I always did. Somewhere between the cornbread and the wine, Darnell got loud. He loved an audience. Started talking about the shop, how far he'd come, how business was booming, how hard work and hustle got him there. But when his cousin's girlfriend, a sweet girl from Decatur, asked, "Wasn't Lorraine helping you with the finances back then?" He waved me off like I was a background singer who came in on the wrong note. Nah, she just handled receipts and grocery lists. I built that place. Then he looked me dead in the eye and said, "You always been a little too emotional to handle real business, baby." The room laughed with him. Even his mama smirked. And I felt my whole chest go still. Like somebody turned down the volume inside me. I carried those dishes to the sink one plate at a time. Not because I had to, because I needed the silence. That quiet place where I could start hearing myself again. The week after Thanksgiving, something inside me hardened. It wasn't rage. It wasn't sorrow. It was steel. He didn't notice. He was too busy arguing with the teenage cashier at AutoZone about a coupon and posting grind mode selfies on Facebook, flexing in front of cars he didn't even fix. I stopped asking him how his day was, stopped waiting up for him to come home. Instead, I started paying attention closely to the lies he told so smoothly, they almost sounded like breathing. One of the first things I did was visit the county clerk's office downtown. I told Darnell I had an OB/GYN appointment. He grunted something like whatever without even looking up from ESPN. Downtown Atlanta was buzzing that morning. Buses hissing, horns blaring, street vendors calling out prices. But inside that clerk's office, it was quiet and cold, the kind of quiet that makes your heartbeat sound loud. I met with a paralegal named Candace, a woman with bright green nails and sharp eyes that had seen too many women like me. She slid papers across the table and said, "You'd be surprised how much is in your name that men forget about." Turns out that building his shop was in, I'd signed the lease with him back in 2011, under both our names. But the renovation permit he filed 3 years ago only listed him. The funny thing about men like Darnell, they forget the paper trail women leave when we love them. That same week, I called my cousin Shayla. She used to handle payroll at a firm that helped small business owners set up LLCs and transfer assets into living trusts. I told her I needed to get my ducks in a row. She paused for a second, then said, "Girl, what he done now?" I didn't answer. She sighed. "All right then, I got you." She introduced me to a black woman attorney named Miss Carter, mid-50s, gray streaks in her locks, voice smooth as sermon smoke. She didn't blink, didn't judge, just opened a manila folder and said, "Let's begin." Meanwhile, at home, Darnell started staying out later. He claimed he was mentoring a new hire, said the boy, needed some structure. But I saw the missed calls from someone saved as Kendra Business. I saw Uber receipts at midnight from lounges that didn't sell motor oil. I didn't confront him. I took screenshots. Every night after he fell asleep on the couch, snoring loud, his phone half open in his hand, I forwarded documents to myself. Lease copies, pay stubs, emails, text threads, every detail that could one day matter. Then I'd whisper a prayer, not for revenge, for clarity. One Sunday afternoon, he left early to handle invoices. I sat on the back porch with a mug of lemon tea and my old spiral notebook, the one with the faded hearts and L&D Auto 2009 written on the cover. Sunlight poured through the magnolia tree, and for the first time in a long time, I could breathe. I wrote down every skill I'd buried for the sake of his ego: accounting, inventory systems, client retention strategies, social media planning, vendor contracts, all the invisible labor he called helping, all the work that made him look like a boss. I wasn't emotional, I was strategic, I was smart, and finally done pretending otherwise. That same day, I ordered a new laptop, had it shipped to Shayla's house. Didn't even tell my son. He's grown now, got his own place, and thinks marriage problems just fix themselves if you pray enough. I didn't need prayers. I needed paperwork. By Christmas, I'd filed for an EIN in my name. Miss Carter helped me draft transfer agreements and notarize power of attorney clauses. Turns out you can move a whole lot of money quietly when you're the one who's always been signing checks. I kept my face calm, my tone soft. Still made Sunday dinner. Still asked about his mama's arthritis. Let him think I was shrinking. Let him believe the silence meant surrender. But the truth was, I was sharpening. Every word, every breath, every quiet night became training. I learned patience again. I learned that silence, when used right, can sound a lot like thunder. The first time I saw the deed transfer paperwork with just my name on it, I didn't feel powerful. I felt quiet, still. Like the moment right before a storm breaks, when the trees stop moving and everything waits. It came in a plain USPS envelope. No logo, no flash. Just my full name in black ink, centered perfectly next to the words, Beneficial Ownership Transfer, Trust Filing, Fulton County. I sat at Shayla's dining room table, hands flat, heartbeat slow. Her place always smelled like vanilla candles and lemon oil, the kind of clean that comes from both mopping and peace. Outside, Atlanta's mid-February wind rattled her blinds. I could hear her old fridge humming behind me, keeping time with my breath. She slid a warm plate of banana bread beside me and said softly, "You sure you ready, cousin?" I looked at her. The cousin who once hid my spare. Keys in her purse so I wouldn't go back to him after a fight, and said, "Been ready." Just didn't know it. The truth was, I'd spent most of my life being ready to clean up messes, ready to catch mistakes, ready to forgive. This time, I was ready for something else, to not flinch, to move my name then from the background to the foundation. Miss Carter worked fast. She wasn't loud, but she was surgical. Every conversation with her felt like an operation, steady, precise, decisive. Within 2 weeks, she'd restructured the original lease agreement from 2011, established my LLC, and filed a silent trust that would take over the title of the building housing Darnell's beloved shop. Not the tools, not the signage, just the dirt under it. That's the thing he never understood. It's not the garage, it's the ground beneath it. He always bragged about his business like it was a monument. He never once looked down to realize whose soil it stood on. Meanwhile, at home, Darnell was unraveling in slow motion. He started buying cologne he never used to wear, something expensive with a name like Midnight Steel. Started leaving his phone face down on the table, like I hadn't once seen him cry over a cracked screen when money was tight. He even shaved off the little salt and pepper patch I used to kiss every morning before work. One night, he came home with a fresh lineup and a smug smile. "How I look, babe?" he asked, brushing imaginary lint off his shirt. I looked up from my laptop, eyes calm, voice even. "You look like someone about to learn a lesson." He blinked. Then that same laugh, the one that used to slice through me, came out again. But this time, it wavered halfway through, like even he didn't believe it. I slept good that night. For the first time in years, I didn't wake up checking my pulse in the dark, wondering if peace was ever coming. By then, I'd already set up a P.O. box downtown, stopped using our joint mailing address for anything important, even got a prepaid phone, one of those little flip phones from Walmart. Darnell thought those were for old people. Perfect. Every spare minute I had, I wasn't watching Judge Mathis or scrolling through recipes I'd never make. I was studying, learning the language of power, paperwork. YouTube became my classroom. I watched videos about real estate trusts, silent partnerships, marital property loopholes, paused, took notes, rewound, took more. I learned what state-level statutes allowed a spouse to quietly reclaim joint assets. I learned how to establish a shell LLC that leased the land back to the main tenant, at a rate they could never quite afford to question, and I learned how to stay invisible, not vengeful, not loud, just effective. The biggest test came on a Tuesday night, 8:34 p.m. I remember because the microwave clock blinked that time at me like it knew something was about to change. His assistant texted me by accident. Her name was Alicia. New girl, blonde wig, thick lashes, long nails that clicked like cheap glass. I'd seen her once, during a drive-by to drop off invoices, and her perfume filled the entire office like cheap defiance. The message lit up my screen. "He's still playing house with that old chick? He said she wouldn't leave even if he spit in her face." I stared at the screen, read it once, twice, 3 times. The words didn't hurt. They clarified. Sometimes betrayal doesn't cut. It clears the fog. I didn't reply, didn't call, didn't throw a fit. I printed it. The next morning, I brewed coffee slow, ate eggs in silence, folded laundry like ritual. Then on Friday, the air crisp, the sun too bright to be kind, I walked into the shop. I wore my old HR blazer from the hospital days, neutral tones, flat shoes, hair wrapped tight, face calm, no makeup, no jewelry, just my presence. The bell over the shop door jingled when I stepped in. The smell hit me first. Motor oil, burnt rubber, and men who thought respect was optional. Alicia was behind the counter, clicking her nails against her phone. She looked up, smirked. "He's not in today, miss." I handed her the printout, watched the blood drain from her face like someone pulled her plug. "You sent this to the wrong number," I said quietly. "But the right woman." Her mouth opened, then closed. She tried to speak, but I raised a hand. "I'm not here to argue, baby. I'm here to document." Then I turned, walked out, and let the glass door swing behind me, hard enough to clap against the frame. Sounded like punctuation. That night, under the soft light of my dining room, I wrote an official grievance. Addressed it to the Board of Trustees, a board he didn't even know existed, one I now had controlling voting rights on. I attached the message, added context, attached receipts. Then I clicked send. The next afternoon, I got a call from one of the junior partners, Lionel. Sweet man, nervous voice, always smelled like peppermint and hard work. "Ms. Lorraine," he said slowly, "I didn't realize you were involved at that level." I smiled. "You will." See, Darnell never cared for structure. He thought charisma was a business plan. He signed whatever I put in front of him, as long as I kissed him after. He trusted what I managed because he thought managing was beneath him. He believed power lived in volume. But I knew. It lives in silence, in documentation, in quiet moves that take 30 days to settle and a lifetime to undo. By the first week of March, everything was in place. The new building lease was quietly restructured. My trust now held 76% controlling interest. Miss Carter and I sat in her office, sunlight streaming through her blinds, papers stacked neatly between us. Her nails tapped once on the final signature line. "Congratulations, Miss Hamilton," she said, her voice low and proud. "You now own the ground his dreams sleep on." I didn't smile. Not yet. Justice, I've learned, doesn't taste sweet until it's swallowed. I had one final move left, something surgical, something that would turn his laughter into silence. So I waited. I let him get cocky again. Let him believe the distance between us was boredom, not brilliance. He'd stop at gas stations just to call someone named Kendra and tell her, she still thinks she got me figured out. I'd just sip my tea and smile to myself. Then came that Thursday morning, sky overcast, air heavy, the kind of morning where the world feels like it's holding its breath. I sent a calendar invite. Title, Operational Alignment Brief, 11 hour a.m. Location, Conference Room, B, Downtown Shared Office Suite. Invitees, Darnell, Lionel, Miss Carter, me, and one unexpected guest, the attorney from the bank. When he saw the invite, he laughed out loud. "Sis trying to rebrand my empire now?" he told his mechanic buddy. "She must be bored." He went to bed smug. He woke up late. But right before 11, while he was in his office pretending to review invoices, his assistant picked up the ringing desk phone. She froze, looked at him, held it out like it was radioactive. It's a lawyer," she stammered. "Something about land ownership?" He rolled his eyes, snatched the receiver, still smirking. 30 seconds in, the smirk vanished. 1 minute in, the color drained from his face. By 2 minutes, his hand was trembling. By 3, he sat down, didn't speak, didn't move. That was the first time I ever saw Darnell go silent. It wouldn't be the last. The meeting was set for Friday, 11 a.m. sharp. Miss Carter told me to arrive early, not because we needed to, but because presence speaks before words ever do. "Let him walk into your silence," she'd said. "It'll do more than any speech ever could." I got there at 10:15. The conference room smelled like lemon polish and faint printer ink. Glass walls, chrome handles, everything neat and deliberate. A space made for decisions. Outside the window, downtown Atlanta buzzed in its usual rhythm. Buses groaning, traffic horns distant, the hum of a city too busy to notice quiet revolutions happening on the 14th floor. I sat at the end of the long glass table, facing the door. My reflection looked back at me, still, focused, unreadable. I wore navy, not black, too final, not red, too emotional. Navy said, "I'm calm, I'm clear, I'm in control." I didn't wear perfume, just shea butter and clean linen. My earrings were small pearls, a detail my grandmother used to say made a woman look like she meant business without saying so. Miss Carter arrived next, her locks pulled back, silver at the temples catching the morning light. She gave me a nod. "You ready?" "Been ready," I said. My voice came out, steady, even to my own surprise. At 10:55, Lionel slipped in, holding a slim binder and a nervous smile. "Morning, Miss Hamilton," he said. "Morning, Lionel. You doing all right?" He nodded too quickly, the way men do when they realize the balance of power in a room has shifted, but they're still trying to find their footing. Then the clock hit 11:06. Darnell pushed through the glass doors like he was walking into his own kingdom, not realizing the deed had already been signed to a new queen. That familiar swagger was still there, but it felt thinner, stretched over nerves he couldn't hide. He was wearing cologne again. Same midnight steel scent that didn't fit him, too sharp, too showy, hair freshly lined, watch gleaming. But his eyes? They were darting, calculating, looking for a foothold that wasn't there anymore. "Lorraine," he said finally, like the name tasted strange in his mouth. I didn't stand. Miss Carter gestured to the chair opposite me. "Please take a seat, Mr. Hamilton." Her tone was velvet over steel. He sat down, half-slouched, pretending calm. She slid a stack of papers toward him. The filing packet, county seal shining faintly under the fluorescent light. His eyes scanned the front page, then the signature line. His lips parted, then pressed shut. That small twitch in his neck started, the one I used to see when he got bad news from the bank or an unexpected bill. "I didn't sign this," he muttered, voice tight. Miss Carter smiled, not cruel, just factual. "No, sir, you didn't. Lorraine did. And since her name was on the original lease, and since she now holds majority interest through the trust, your consent wasn't legally required." He blinked. Once, twice. His fingers tapped the table, trying to process what couldn't be undone. He looked at me like I was a ghost, like I'd appeared in a room he thought belonged only to him, like magic. But all I'd done was read what he never bothered to, the fine print. Lionel cleared his throat, breaking the tension. We just want to understand what this means for operations moving forward." I leaned forward, hands calm on the table. "It means I'll be taking over the lease as your landlord. Nothing changes, as long as payments stay on time and respect stays mutual." Darnell blinked. Once. Then again. His mouth twisted. "The hell you mean landlord? You trying to ruin me?" Miss Carter didn't flinch. "No one's trying to ruin anything, Mr. Hamilton. You may keep the shop and run it as you wish, but the building, and the land beneath it, are now under Lorraine's trust." He stood up too fast. Chair screeched behind him, harsh against the polished floor, hands on his hips, jaw tight. "This some snake move, Lorraine." I tilted my head, calm as still water. "No, baby. This is a grown woman move, a patient move, a legal move." He pointed at me, finger trembling just enough to betray his fear. "You really did all this behind my back?" I looked at him for a long time, at the man who once swore he'd die before disrespecting me, the man who forgot that vows have echoes. Then I said the line I'd been carrying in my chest for months. "I did it in front of your face. You just never thought to look." That line sat in the air like thunder that didn't need lightning. The room went quiet. Even Lionel stopped breathing for a second. Darnell's face flushed. He opened his mouth, but no words came. Finally, he grabbed his jacket and stormed out, door slamming hard enough to rattle the glass wall. Didn't say goodbye, didn't take the papers. But it didn't matter. The filings were real, stamped, certified, processed, filed with the county. The law had already spoken. All that noise was just echo. Miss Carter exhaled softly, packing her briefcase with slow, precise motions. Lionel reached out to shake my hand. His grip was firmer than before, his eyes full of something new. Respect. "Miss Hamilton," he said, voice lower now, "I didn't realize you were this involved." I smiled faintly. I've been involved since the day I signed the first check." Outside, the wind had picked up. The city sounded different. Even the traffic seemed to hum in my favor. I walked out of that building lighter. Not happy, just free. That weekend, he didn't come home. No texts, no calls, just silence. Until Sunday evening when my phone buzzed with a voicemail. His voice was raw, tired. "You went too far, you hear me? This ain't how you fix a marriage." Fix. That man thought I was changing light bulbs, not whole futures. I didn't respond, didn't delete it either, just saved it. Evidence of the moment he realized what losing control sounded like. On Monday morning, I drove by the shop. Didn't plan to, just found myself there. I parked across the street, coffee in hand, window cracked enough to let the early spring air through. The shop sign flickered. One letter half burned out. A metaphor, if I'd ever seen one. Alicia was there, pretending not to notice me. She fidgeted, adjusting her wig, eyes darting toward the door every few seconds. The younger mechanics moved slower than usual, their laughter dimmed to nervous murmurs. Then Darnell stepped out, sunglasses on, posture slouched. A man trying to hold on to dignity that had already slipped away. He saw me, didn't wave, didn't smile, didn't even pretend. I took one slow sip of my coffee, rolled down my window just a bit more and met his gaze. Then I nodded, not petty, not proud, just acknowledgement. Then I drove away. I wasn't there to gloat. I was there to be seen, not as a wife, not as a helper, but as a force. That afternoon, the first rent payment cleared. It came through the business account, the one I used to manage years ago. When I checked the transaction record, I noticed something small but telling. It was short, by exactly $219. I didn't call to ask, didn't text, didn't even blink. I charged a late fee, just like he would have done. The system sent an automated notice, and I imagined the look on his face when it hit his inbox. Fairness, I thought, always looks like betrayal to the man who benefited from imbalance. That night, I went home, lit a cinnamon candle. My favorite, the one he used to say gave him a headache, turned on Anita Baker low enough to hear my thoughts between notes. The air felt warm, the house quiet, clean, mine. No tension humming beneath the silence, no shadow moving through rooms I'd already paid for. I wasn't celebrating. I was reclaiming space, the emotional kind, the mental kind, the kind he'd been renting for free in my mind for years. And now, eviction was final. By April, everything was quiet. Too quiet for a man like Darnell. He was a man who fed on noise. Loud cars revving in the driveway. Loud stories told half-true to impress whoever was listening. Loud gestures meant to distract from how hollow everything really was underneath. Silence was his starvation. But me? I was living in the quiet now, and I wore it like silk. The days moved slower. My mornings started with sunlight slipping across my kitchen counter and the soft hum of my kettle. No arguments about breakfast, no shoes left by the door, no heavy footsteps pacing the hallway. Just peace. And the distant comfort of knowing he was out there scrambling, trying to figure out how his own kingdom had turned into someone else's paperwork. The shop kept operating. Barely. Every week I'd see the rent payment come through, always a few days late, always with a different excuse written in the memo line. Then one morning, a cashier's note arrived tucked inside the envelope. "Don't get comfortable." I laughed, forwarded it to Miss Carter with no caption. 5 minutes later, she replied, "Comfort is irrelevant. Legal standing is what matters." That line alone was enough to remind me. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was standing. Still, I wasn't done. Owning the land was the first move. But the building? That needed a deeper touch. So I scheduled an inspection, quietly. Didn't use any public company. Didn't put my name on the request. I went through a city contractor I'd met years ago at the hospital, one of my hospice patient's grandsons. He still remembered me. Said, "Ms. Lorraine, I owe you one. My grandma said you were the only nurse who treated her like she still mattered." He kept his promise. told me, "Don't worry, I'll keep it discreet." The report came back 10 days later. I sat at my dining table again, hands folded as I read line after line of quiet opportunity. Roof wear, pipe corrosion, faulty HVAC, nothing catastrophic, just enough to justify a full 60-day commercial. Compliance review under city code. It was perfect, legal, undeniable. So I sent the notice. He called the same day, didn't even wait for business hours to end. His voice came through the phone, tight, brittle, like something breaking under its own pressure. "You trying to shut me down?" I stirred my tea slowly. Steam rose between us like distance. "You ever wonder why the heating bill's been high all winter? Pipes leak, roofs sagging. I'm just protecting the investment." There was silence on his end, the kind that sounds like confusion mixing with humiliation. Then he muttered low, "You trying to make me beg?" "No," I said softly. "I'm making sure you understand." The call ended without another word. A week later, I got a text from Lionel. Short, to the point. "You know he's been talking about selling? Trying to liquidate before summer." I didn't respond, didn't warn him, didn't interfere. I let him move, because every wrong move brought him closer to learning what stillness feels like. Then came the real storm. Alicia, his assistant, filed a formal complaint with the board. Harassment, unpaid hours, improper texts. She attached screenshots, some of the very same ones I'd quietly saved months ago. It wasn't revenge, it was alignment. The truth simply caught up. When I got the email notification from the board's portal, I didn't smile. I just read, printed, filed, documentation, my quiet art form. Miss Carter called me the next morning. Her tone was calm, almost satisfied. "Ms. Hamilton," she said, "we're moving to freeze any unauthorized asset transfers pending review. That means no sales, no hidden accounts, no moving funds. It's all locked." I leaned back in my chair, staring at the morning light crawling up my living room wall. "It's handled, then?" "Handled," she confirmed. It was like watching a man punch at shadows. Every direction he turned, there I was. Not as his wife, not as his helper, but as the woman he never expected to read the fine print, the same fine print that now boxed him in. By the last Friday of the month, I'd made my decision. It was time for closure. I scheduled a new meeting. Same room, same table, but a different energy. This time, I wore white, structured, simple, clean. Not to symbolize surrender, but peace. The kind of peace that comes after you've already won. Miss Carter was already seated when I arrived. She looked up and smiled. "You look radiant." "Peace'll do that to a woman," I said. At 11:07, Darnell walked in. No cologne this time, no swagger, just a man who'd finally realized gravity applies to everyone. His shoulders slumped. His eyes were rimmed red. He sat down slow, palms pressed against the table like he needed to feel something solid. "Why?" he whispered. I didn't blink, didn't flinch. I wanted him to see the cost of every time he dismissed my quiet. "You laughed when I said I was done," I said. "You spit on my loyalty. You ignored my silence like it meant nothing." He shook his head, voice cracking at the edges. "We was building something, Lorraine." I nodded once. "We did," I said. "I just changed the locks." He looked down, jaw tight. The sound of his breath filled the space between us. Miss Carter, patient and steady, slid a manila folder across the table. Inside, a formal buyout offer. He could keep the business name, the logo, the client list, but not the location. Everything he'd built, or thought he'd built, would need a new home. The land beneath it was no longer his to stand on. Miss Carter explained the terms in that calm, legal rhythm that cuts through emotion, like wind through curtains. "The lease will end in 45 days, she said. "Peacefully, legally, completely." He didn't move for a long time, just stared at the packet like it had teeth. I could see it in his face, The disbelief, the pride, the slow unraveling of the story he'd told himself about who held the power. Then his voice came, thin and trembling. "You really don't want me no more?" I met his eyes, soft but steady. "I don't even want your apology." The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was full, heavy with the sound of realization settling into him. That was the moment it broke in him. Not the business, not the building, the illusion that I would always stay. He looked away first, and that's how I knew it was over. Outside, the April air was soft. Warm wind carried the faint smell of honeysuckle from the park across the street. I walked out slow, heels clicking against marble. The door closed behind me, and for the first time in years, I didn't look back. I didn't go back to the shop after that final meeting. Didn't need to. Everything that needed to be said had already been put into motion. Signed in blue ink, sealed with quiet conviction, and filed neatly with the clerk downtown. Miss Carter handled the closing, always steady, always thorough. She sent me a photo later that afternoon, the final packet stapled, sealed, and notarized. The county stamp was clean, sharp, official. I stared at that image for a long time, not because I doubted it was real, but because part of me needed to feel it, the stillness that comes after years of holding your breath, that moment when a woman finally remembers the sound of her own name, said without apology. For the first time in years, my life felt level, balanced, like every choice had led me here. This soft, silent moment of confirmation. The next few weeks rolled by without drama, the way peace always slips in, soft, clean, without knocking. No explosions, no shouting, just quiet. I moved Darnell's name off the utility accounts, clicked through online forms one by one, electricity, water, business line. Every confirmation email felt like a deep exhale. I transferred ownership of the shop number to his private phone, per the agreement. Scheduled renovations for the building, new paint, new lighting, a different kind of energy, not to erase what had been, but to bless what was coming. The morning they cleared out the last of his equipment, I stayed home. Didn't want to stand there watching old memories be hauled out like trash. I brewed coffee slow, sat by the kitchen window while the morning light spilled across my tile in thin gold ribbons. Outside, a cardinal landed on the porch rail. Bright red, unbothered. My grandmother used to say cardinals are ancestors stopping by to see how you're doing. That morning, I whispered, "I'm good now, Grandma." Right on cue, the bird tilted its head, then flew off. Around 10 CE, Shayla came by, brought a warm croissant in a brown paper bag and that look cousins give when they already know the truth but want to hear you say it. She sat down across from me, stirring her coffee with a spoon that clinked too loud in the quiet. "You good?" she asked softly. I nodded. "I ain't mad," I said. "I'm just done." She leaned back and smiled slow. "There's a difference," she said. "There really is. Anger still wants something from the person who hurt you, a reaction, a reason, a regret. But done? Done just wants peace." That afternoon, my phone buzzed with a message. Blocked number. Still, I knew the rhythm of those words before I even opened it. "I didn't know you had that in you." I didn't reply, because I always had it in me. He just never cared to look close enough to see it. Weeks passed. April gave way to May. The days got warmer. The air smelled like magnolia and cut grass. I started spending more time at the building again. The painters worked fast, humming gospel while they rolled the new color. Soft cream walls, navy trim. It looked lighter, freer, the kind of building that didn't remember arguments anymore. When the work was done, I stood on the sidewalk and looked up at the sign I'd had made. Hamilton Commons. Simple, elegant lettering. Not for him, for me. Because I built that name. Carried it with grace when he dragged it through gossip. Kept it polished when he forgot what it meant. I decided to lease the front unit to a group of young Black women who'd started a wellness collective. yoga, therapy circles, birth doula programs, financial literacy workshops, all things that heal what the world tries to break in us. The day we signed their lease, one of the women said shyly, "It means a lot to have a space like this, Miss Hamilton." I smiled. "You deserve it," I said. "Just remember, invest in your peace before it costs you." They didn't know the full story. Didn't need to. The building carried it in its bones. 2 weeks later, they opened, soft jazz spilling out the windows, sage burning by the door, laughter echoing through, rooms that once held tension. That first afternoon, I brought them a welcome basket, flowers from my garden, a few candles, and a handwritten note that said, "Build slow, breathe often." As I stepped out of the building, I looked across the street, and there he was, Darnell, in his old blue truck, window cracked, engine running low, just sitting. He didn't get out, didn't wave, didn't even pretend to check his phone. But he saw me, and I saw him. For a second, the years between us felt like fog clearing. I could almost see the version of him I used to love, the one who worked late nights and held my hand when we had nothing but faith in each other. But that man was gone long before I ever signed a deed. There was no smirk this time, no laugh, just a man sitting in the shadow of his own noise. He looked at me the way people look at something they can't fix, and maybe for the first time, he understood. Some losses are too quiet to hear until they're final. I didn't speak, didn't wave, didn't offer softness where it was never earned. I walked to my car, keys light in my hand, peace heavy in my chest. The air was warm. The city felt slower somehow, like it had waited for me to catch up to myself. On the drive home, I rolled the windows down, played that old Gladys Knight track, Neither One of Us. The same one I used to hum while folding his work shirts, back when I believed folding love neatly could keep it from falling apart. But this time, I sang it loud. Let my voice ride the wind. No tears, no shaking, just release. I wasn't broken, wasn't bitter, wasn't bragging. I was free. When I got home, the sun was setting low, honey-colored lights spilling through the curtains. I lit a new candle, jasmine and sandalwood, sat on my porch swing with a throw blanket and a bowl of peaches I'd sliced just the way I like them. The world was quiet again, but it wasn't empty. The wind brushed across my face, gentle, like a blessing. Somewhere down the street, a child laughed. A screen door slammed. Life moved on. And for the first time in years, I felt like the ground beneath me truly belonged to me. Not just legally, spiritually, completely. He laughed when I said I was done. But when the lawyer called his office, he finally listened. If this story struck a chord, hit like, subscribe, and tell me what you think in the comments.